Thanks, Bernie. Il budget a sono delle grassa, la sono vina. Minutes retirement the cat the for soccer the Gapinia and the pain. I was going to check the complaints to pitch the party who is as during the game Pisnia and thanks, Bernie.
Morning, members. Just first of all, I call on Mr. Tom Kilfeather to read out the COVID arrangements for today's meeting.
Cathaoirleach members, the National Standard Operating Guidance for the attendance at council meetings provide that all in attendance be informed at the start of the meeting of the COVID-19 control measures in place. I'd like to draw your attention to a few issues. Each person attending this meeting in person should have completed a COVID declaration form before entering the room. These forms will also serve as a record of attendance for contact tracing purposes if required. The meeting room has been prepared in accordance with the Standard Operating Guidance. Face coverings must be worn by all attendees when entering and leaving the room. There should be no congregating in the building before or after the meeting. A one-way system is in place for entering and exiting the room. Exit will be via the side door. In compliance with the recommendations in the Standard Operating Guidelines, the meeting time will not exceed 1 hour and 55 minutes. Attendees must adhere at all times to the 2-metre physical distancing and follow the public health advice in relation to hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette. A response plan is in place in the event that an attendee at the meeting feels unwell or is displaying possible COVID-19 symptoms. An isolation room has been provided. If anyone feels unwell during the meeting, you should alert myself or Kevin and you will be escorted to the isolation room. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Mr. Kilfeather. Good morning, members, and good morning to all the members that are coming in by virtual or Zoom. At the outset, I'd just ask everybody, please, if you can mute your microphones and, if possible, maybe put your mobile phones on silent. I just want to thank everyone for the cooperation with today's meeting. Hopefully it's going to run smoothly. We have a long agenda, 63 items on it, and I think with the cooperation of the members that have agreed to Zoom in and the reduced numbers here, that we will get through the meeting hopefully smoothly. And could I ask maybe at the outset if everybody, when they're finished or if they have to move through the building, maybe to wear their masks for COVID safety. I'm going to, again, just ask for your cooperation with, as I say, 63 items on the agenda. I'm going to have to try and limit people to, talking on motions, just that everybody gets a chance. It's a longer meeting than last month, and we just luckily got through January. So reports have been issued out. We have one presentation. The person that's doing the presentation has agreed, and I spoke to them this morning. They will be strictly adhering to the 10 minutes, and that's it. So I think, out of fairness to everybody, if we can, if there are questions, put the questions, but maybe if we can go through the items as quick as possible, it's just going to be fairer on everybody. I don't want someone coming to me afterwards and saying, well, someone, didn't get a chance to get in. I think if the 18 of us can get a chance, if we can limit our time, we are under time constraints. So I thank you in anticipation of that. So move on to the first item. Item number 1, to note the minutes of the SPC1 Housing and Corporate. Councillor Bree and Councillor O'Boyle. Number 2, to note minutes of the Sligo Drumcliff District 16. Can you just move Councillor Walsh and Fox, right? Motion item 3, to note minutes of the Sligo. I propose. Councillor O'Grady and Councillor O'Boyle. Item number 4, to confirm minutes of the special re-election of representatives. Councillor Bray. Councillor Bray and second Councillor Walsh. Thank you. Item 5, Councillor Clark. Seconder, Councillor Bray. Item number 6, to note minutes and reports of meeting. Noted. Lovely. Number 7, to approve the proposed boundary changes made under the boundary survey. Report to follow. Is that?
Should Cathaoirleach, because it's the one report I didn't find in my. Thank you.
Number 7,
Abstain on that because I didn't read the report. So.
Right. It was, we understand it was issued on Friday. Is that okay? And if anyone hasn't got it, we'll send it out to them. Can I get a proposer and seconder? Councillor Walsh and Councillor Gilroy. Thank you. Item number 8.
Proposed.
Lovely. And second, I'll second that. Right. Councillor Martin Connolly. I'll second that, yeah.
Yep.
Number 9.
Proposed. George Mullaney.
Councillor Mullaney and seconded Councillor Walsh. Number 10. Can I get a seconder, please? Number 10. Gino. Seconder for that motion. Do you want me to read out the motion? Councillor Clerk, thank you. Number 11, to consider Chief Executive's report. Can I get a proposal?
Here, look, number 11, that's the public realm report. Here, look, I have just one query on that because and I've had correspondence, I don't know, other members have, but there's an issue relating to the vehicular access to the right of way between the Carl House and Millennium House in Stephen Street. There is currently a vehicular right of way which brings you in at the rear of Barton Smith's and the Garavo Bar and so on. And it would appear, but that's why I'm not clear. Is it proposed to close that access, that vehicular access?
I hear that.
Yes.
I hear that. Yeah. That issue has been made aware to us, and any of those issues, whether it's to do with parking, they're all going to be dealt with individually with the traders and I suppose with the local community during the detailed design phase, which is the next phase. Now I know Leonora is on the line there, and I suppose if there is a response to that specific question in relation to the right of way. But a number of concerns or queries were raised in relation to some of those issues, but that they will be a matter, individual matters that will be dealt with during the detailed design phase of the project, which is the next phase. I'm not sure if Leonora wants to make a comment on that.
Yeah, thanks, Dorothy. Councillor O'Grady wants to just come in first.
Just before Leonora comes in, I too have been contacted about the issue that Councillor Bree has raised, but also the issue of a parking space for people with disability in proximity to Barton Smiths. So I would like in Leonora's answer that she would address both of those situations. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you, and Councillor Casserly. I can't hear you, Councillor Casserly. Turn on your mic. Your mic is off now.
Okay, thanks. I've been contacted as well, and I'm just interested to hear the responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonora.
Okay, yeah. I don't know if I've shared my screen. I've tried to share my screen. Is that coming up?
No, unfortunately not.
No, my presentation. Okay, well, I can address the issues anyway. That's no problem. Jimmy, you might want to try and share show the presentation if you can. So I'll address the first issue is the vehicular access near Barton Smith, so between Carroll House and Millennium House. So my presentation will show a picture of what is there at the minute. So it's basically a ramp between Stephen Street and the lower footpath. So if you keep scrolling on, Jimmy, you'll come to us. These are just some of the images of the scheme, but you'll keep going. Keep going. Yeah. So this is the site layout plan for Stephen Street. So keep going through. These are all the drawings. There. So this here is the close up of the site layout, and just where the zebra crossing is there, and you'll see the kind of the laneway between Carroll House and Millennium House. So really, it's not a vehicular access. What happens is it's a ramp. So refuse trucks or delivery trucks will park on the road and they'll wheel down their goods down that ramp. So look, we've looked at that issue. We saw the submission from Mr. Smith, and we're very happy to look at the detailed design of that particular area and provide a ramp that will keep that access available for the shops along there. There is a kind of a ramp already provided, but it's closer to Hyde Bridge, so it probably doesn't fulfil the function that Mr. Smith or anybody in Barton Smith or any of those shops are looking for. But with the design team, we have agreed that we will look at that issue at the detailed design stage. And in relation to the universal parking space near Barton Smith, that's going to be a harder one to achieve. So at the minute on Stephen Street, there's 2 disabled or universal parking spaces, and there still are 2 universal parking spaces being provided. But to provide a universal parking space next to Barton Smith isn't going to be possible while we're trying to provide this kind of public realm. While we're trying to improve the public realm, improve the space for pedestrians. But we can certainly look at providing it closer than it is at the minute. There's a space next to the library, and that's there at the minute, and that's going to be maintained. Yeah, we can look at that issue. We can look at maybe providing one on Holborn Street. That could be an alternative. Is that okay?
Thank you, Leonora. I'll bring Councillor Bray in on that.
I'd like to thank Leonora for her response, but the important issue for me, anyhow, is that the fact that Mr. Smith has told us that they've had vehicular access to the rear of the shop for decades through that access route, and they want to ensure that it is maintained. That while I understand that generally welcome the improvement works, I can certainly appreciate the fact that they would want to retain that access for vehicles that may require to use it. And I note that in the report it talks about re-examining the issue. I have a concern about that type of language, and I think we need to say it here today, Cathaoirleach, that we want to ensure that business and the other businesses have retained that right. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you. Councillor Healy, did you indicate?
In relation, thanks for your report. I have a concern that we're going to be losing disabled areas. At the end of the day, it's public consultation, and this is where people should have their say. And there is 2 areas at present there for people with disabled that can park there. And I think we should be holding at least one of them and not be saying that we can move it on into another area. So I think that's something we should look at. We're all contacted by Mr. Smith in relation to his problem. At the end of the day, we have to be encouraging businesses and helping them in any way we can. And if there's an access there, he should be entitled to hold on to whatever route he had. He has it there for over 100 years or more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilroy.
And thank you, Cathaoirleach. David Smith wrote to everybody there back during January. I spoke to him before Christmas. I was in there doing some Christmas shopping, and he showed me where the problems are. He's also concerned about the lack of the access, as Councillor Bree said, from the Stephen Street side, that they always historically have had access from that side as well, and that the vehicular access from that end has now been removed as well. So for that reason, I'd like to see, there was a number of things done there in that area. There was one of the businesses that developed a place of outdoor dining and things like that, where one of the property owners actually came to me and said they weren't consulted. And I think we need to look at that whole thing and to check that every one of the businesses that are affected have been properly consulted and that they've been given whether there's some sort of a planning permission or whatever that's been used on that. It's not a standard planning permission, whether it's a Section 8 or whatever it is, but that we know that it has been done and that each of them have been given their opportunity to say it. And finally, the others have raised the disabled spots, which is very important, but the loading bays are important as well. And I notice that there's now going to be a loading bay on outside the Ulster Bank on Holborn Street, and there's also going to be one round the corner on Stephen Street outside Matt Lyons's. But I think the other loading bays, there used to be one directly outside Barton Smith's there, and there was one outside the Sligo Champion office. And a lot of businesses would come in there, and there might be a short time in there doing some business or delivering something, and those loading bays are always busy. And I think it'll be a loss for the area. Deliveries can't be done there was an old-fashioned time when the big lorry from delivering would come at a particular time every week. But nowadays, everything is coming just in time, and there's courier deliveries and all that. Deliveries are going on all day, every day, and for that reason, we need to have enough, to make sure we have enough loading bays to keep the businesses going.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons.
Here, look, I want to concur with what everybody is saying here. From my own experience, and I know it because I worked along that street for a number of years. I think my first job was in P.J. Coleman's when I was a young lad. All deliveries that was made to all of them shops along there, Barton Smith's, Coleman's, Wimpy Bar was there at the time. There was Carol's Bar. All of the deliveries was made there, was made in through that gateway. The other aspect, and I want to highlight this, and this is the most important one. There is a ramp that brings the two levels of the footpath or the road down onto, or the footpath down onto one. That would cost a considerable amount of money when that was done. I think it was £80,000, not euro, pounds was to get that done. Because of the two different levels of the road, it meant the services and everything else had to be altered, everything, and that's what made it so expensive. We had fought for years to get that ramp into place. It is the perfect place for a disabled car parking space. And you know, there is one car parking space there disabled. There should be two, side by side. And that is the reality, or one adjacent to the other. Because the people that is doing their business along there, that it be in Barton Smith's or any other along the banks or anything else, it means to have access of that ramp down. But the aspect of the access into the back of those buildings, that is a right of way, and I feel myself that anything that interferes with the car parking spaces outside of there should be a no-no, especially when it comes to disabled parking. There's no sense about something into Holborn Street, because guess what? As soon as it's gone into Holborn Street, it'll be moved on somewhere else when we're developing something else, and it'll be moved back further and further and further. And that's one thing I don't want to see. The idea of disabled parking is to make accessible as close as you can to the most, or to the services that's within the town. Thanks,
Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I concur with the majority of what was said. I want to thank Leonora and the Director for the replies. I think it's important that this access is facilitated in as much as possible. This is an SME that's in the county for many decades, like many of the other adjacent SMEs. Particularly for the sector that we're going to have a tough time ahead in the years ahead after what this pandemic has done to businesses. So I would hope that this access can be facilitated and maintained where possible.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Dorothy, do you want to come back in on that?
Yes, please, Cahill. Thank you. No, I'd like to thank the members for the concerns that they have raised, and those concerns in relation to the access right away, the disabled parking, the loading bays, all of them have been raised with us. And in fairness, Leonora has and her team, they've already been initially consulted with the design team. And I suppose that's the process that we're about to enter in now, the detailed design. All of that will require consultation with the individual traders. And it is in our interest as well to make sure that we support local businesses insofar as we possibly can. This is going to be a major transformation of this part of, I suppose, the inner core of Sligo town. And we know that there are challenges, I suppose, with the different levels that Councillor Gibbons has outlined. But insofar as we possibly can, this, as I say, this is going to be transformational for Sligo, but it will be done in consultation with the local business owners. And, we're not going to take away anybody's rights or anything like that. things may have to change or move up or down or whatever else, but it will be done in consultation with the local businesses. And we certainly will be trying to maintain disabled parking spots and loading bays and the access as well. So I suppose the next phase, the detailed design phase, is a critical stage, and it takes a while because there is so many different pertinent issues to be kind of agreed and put to bed before we can enter, I suppose, the construction phase. But anyway, look, we thank the members for their for what they've raised, and certainly they'll all be taken on board when we enter the detailed design stage.
Thank you, Dorothy, for that. So, members, have we agreed on that, on the discussion we've had? Can I get a proposer on that? So, is it agreed?
It's agreed.
Agreed, Councillor O'Grady. Seconder?
Yes.
Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Walsh? Agreed. Move on. So, item number 12. Councillor Queenan, yes?
Yeah, I wish to propose item 12, just to say, make a couple of comments. One, I want to thank Sligo County Council for their work in preparing the plan, and Fall Ireland for the funding. And this will be an exciting project when completed. I have two requests. One, could the work not commence until after the summer season in Strone? And two, it's important now, because there will be impact on car parking in the square area in Strone, that we proceed with making Pier Road a one-way system. That's the only two issues. We're going to deal with it again. Again, thanks to all.
Thanks, Councillor Queenan. Seconded, Councillor Clark. Do you want to stand on that? No, agreed. Now, members, we're moving on to item number 13, to hear a presentation by Sligo Neolithic Landscape Group on the proposed application to the tentative list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites for the Sligo Neolithic Landscapes. At the outset, I want to welcome Stefan Berg and Robert Hensey, who are going to give a short and brief presentation, and I'll bring Dorothy Clark in also on that, and I know that the chair of the Sligo Health Forum wants to say something. So with your agreement, members, 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Yeah, and within the last year, Sligo County Council would have worked with Sligo Neolithic Landscape Group in the preparation of an application to the tentative list for the UNESCO for one of our unique sites to be considered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, the department would have requested, or would have opened for applications back in 2019, and the closing date for applications, it was the 31st of March, and we now just have heard that that has been extended to June of this year. But the Sligo Neolithic Landscape Group have been busy and working on, I suppose, the conservation of Sligo Neolithic landscape, particularly the passage tombs, for the last number of years, and they have put together a very good, I suppose, draft application, which would have already received approved department. We're now kind of in this last stage of to get onto the list. So a lot of work has to be done over a number of different areas. So I suppose maybe just brief the members in relation to this and what's involved. Both Robert and Stefan are here to make, as you say, a brief presentation in relation to what is to be covered in the application going forward. And I suppose what exactly a World Heritage Site status would mean for Sligo. So I think it's Robert I call on first, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Thanks, Robert.
Okay, so thanks, Cathaoirleach, and thanks, Dorothy. I'll try and share our presentation now with you. So I hope you can all see that. I'd like to begin by thanking the Cathaoirleach, the Acting Chief Executive, Council members and staff for the kind opportunity to speak this morning. And I'd particularly like to thank Director of Services Dorothy Clark, Heritage Officer Sean Ryan and Frank Moylan, who have been providing invaluable help and guidance over the last number of months. So just by way of introductions, our group are Sligo Neolithic Landscapes. We are a public participation network group established in 2015 with a mission to protect and promote Sligo's Neolithic heritage. The members of the Sligo Neolithic Landscape Steering Committee are all from or have lived in Sligo for many years and are professionals from the field of archaeology, history, heritage, farming, the arts, tourism, and the digital world. Within the group, we have leading research and expertise on Irish passage tombs at a national level, and especially so regarding the sites in this region. Our steering committee are myself, the chair of the group, Dr. Stephen Berg, Eugene Flynn, Dr. Fiona Gallagher, Austin McTiernan, Pádraig Meehan, and Mark Roddy. So you can see some of us hopefully pictured over. Not pictured there is Declan Lavin, who I think would be known to many of the officials present. Declan is a retired dairy farmer who twice served as county chairman of the IFA and of course former chairman of County Sligo Enterprise Board. Along with these members, our group and the World Heritage concept are supported by a growing number of individuals, PPNs and community groups. If you're interested, you can find out a little bit more about our aims and objectives at our website, sligoneolithic.org. So in partnership with Sligo County Council, as Dorothy just said, we aim to submit a bid for the Passage Tomb Landscapes of Sligo to be placed on the UNESCO World Heritage Site tentative list. I know that's a kind of odd phrase, but basically it's a list or a kind of panel that the state will consider as possibilities to be put forward to UNESCO for full World Heritage Site status. And it's a competitive list, so there are other groups in the country also applying. We have a very good case for inclusion though. So on the map here in red, you can see there are only 5 World Heritage locations in all of Europe that are focused on megalithic monuments. So you've Brunabóinne there, just sort of left to right, the Orkney Islands, just north of Scotland there, Stonehenge in southern England, Antequera in Spain, and Malta then furthest to the right, the Temples of Malta. And there's actually only 13 of these sites with this focus in the whole World Heritage Site list. The special qualities of the Sligo sites, in particular their careful landscape settings and the extraordinary degree of preservation here, offer something not found at these other locations. It is an almost intact piece of the fabric of the world of Neolithic people. So where are these monuments? In the image on the left, you can see the locations of most of the passage tombs of Sligo. They're represented there as those little white dots. Most of them will know them or call them cairns on the top of hills and mountains, or places associated with our mythology and legend, such as beds of Dearman and Grania. The sites are found in many well-known locations, such as Knocknarea, Carramore, Ballygawley, the Ox Mountains, Carrakeel and the Hill of Kesh. In all, there's approximately about 85 passage tomb tradition sites in the county. Most of these sites can be broadly encompassed by circles just over about 20 kilometres apart, connected by the course of the Unshin River, as you can see in the image here on the right. And the circle in the north has the Carramore tombs at its heart, but many other monuments are, drawn into this circle or surrounding Carramore. And then the circle to the south is anchored by the Brickleave Mountains, Carrakeel and the Hill of Kesh. But these sites are not only found in the major clusters. Often they are just by themselves in the landscape or right in our midst, such as here as Abbey Quarter North, surrounded by the Garavogue Villas, built in 1940. And sometimes this is jokingly referred to as Ireland's first roundabout. The other site, in a radically different landscape context, is a small passage tomb known as Cailleach Vera's house in the Ballygawley Hills. And much of that land surrounding land is very sort of marginal land or under quilcha forestry. So even though these two monuments might look very different to us today, they are very closely related Neolithic sites built over 5,000 years ago by people with a shared ancestry, or maybe even by the same community. It should be noted that UNESCO best practice is that living landscapes should be maintained, that from town to farm, life should continue. UNESCO are strongly against any idea of museumifying the landscape. Additionally, being placed on the tentative list is really only the start of a process of communication and cooperation between landowners, the local authority, and all other stakeholders, which would take place over several years. It's very much a community-led and ground-up process. So basically, what we are aiming for is really only to get to the starting line of this process. The process itself would promote greater engagement with local communities, discussion forums, school visits, and so on, as well as engagement with other World Heritage Sites nationally and internationally. Considerable work has been put into the draft tentative list application already, as Dorothy noted, and it has been reviewed positively by an international reviewer and the National Monument Service. But there is a lot of work still to be done on this, in particular engagement with landowners and other stakeholders. And as you can imagine, our current situation with COVID has made this difficult. A baseline study of the monuments is essential, and Sligo Neolithic Landscapes are in the process of sourcing funding for this. And this study will help us to assess which sites are most endangered or perhaps unsuitable for visitors, and which could be key visitor locations. There are several key locations which could be envisaged in the proposed World Heritage Site. For instance, Carramore, Knocknarea, Carrickeel and Ballygawley. And you might, for instance, imagine a visitor, coming to Sligo and moving between these and other locations. And in fact, that's a great sort of advantage of this site. There's other heritage sites in the world, and a visitor might go there for half a day or maybe just 2 hours, not even stay in the locality. Whereas you might imagine a visitor here, spending some time, spending several days, staying in the hotels, and maybe trying to get to all of these sort of key locations to see the landscape from different perspectives. So what would the benefits be of World Heritage status? Significantly, it would raise the national and international profile of the county. It would help us achieve a professionally assessed model of sustainable tourism. Importantly, a byproduct of this process will, by necessity, be a management plan, which will help ensure our Neolithic heritage is fully protected for future generations. And finally, it would provide support and potential funding for landowners and also for communities. So on that note, I would like to thank you for your attention here and for the invitation to speak at this ordinary meeting of Sligo County Council. Stefan and I are very happy to take any questions you might have in the time available.
Thank you very much, Robert, for that. And just on my own behalf, as Cahirlock, there's no doubt that the Sligo's Neolithic landscapes are an exceptional heritage asset for the whole county, and that they are unparalleled in world terms. And I think Sligo County Council and the members welcome this community-led initiative. I'm going to let Councillor Gilroy in now, who's chair of the Sligo Heritage Forum.
Thanks very much, Cahirlock, and thanks, Stefan, for the presentation. We look forward to having you come before the Heritage Forum as well, which we welcome. The partnership between Sligo County Council and the Sligo Neolithic Landscapes Group marks the beginning of a process that would see the future sustainable management of Sligo's Neolithic landscape. This initiative is very welcome, and the support of Sligo Heritage Forum is assured. So again, I look forward to seeing you again at that. I suppose if I had any question, firstly, is to welcome the living landscapes. It's something I very much believe in. and to wonder maybe if it can be extended to other areas in the county. And, I'd be thinking of Cairns Hill and Creevy Keel and places like that. So just wondering, are we as well to stay focused on the key area first and then follow up with adding other areas? But thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Casserly. Councillor Casserly, you might, yeah. Can you hear us, Ray?
I can, yeah.
Yeah.
Firstly, congratulations to you, Robert, and all involved in this fantastic project. It's amazing that there's only 13 in the whole world, and we have such a unique offering in Sligo that needs to be listed on the tentative list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. It's very important that living landscapes should be maintained, but also, Robert, you mentioned the fact that they need to be protected, and we all know the damage that has been done on these sites. So I suppose that's probably the most important thing, that they are maintained, but they are to be protected as well. And of course, as you said, a huge priority is the promoting of sustainable tourism, because that's the way that every country is going now, and also the importance of raising the national and international profile of the county. And that has to be welcomed. So anything, I suppose, promotes Sligo on a national and an international stage has to be welcomed. So I wish you well with the rest of the consultations and the applications, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the next stage of where you're at this. So best of luck to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Councillor Maguire, we can't hear you. No audio. Sorry, I'll go to someone else and we'll come back to you maybe.
First of all, thanks for your presentation, Robert, and I'd like to welcome Stefan as well to it. I know the passion that you have for this as well, which is most important, and the drive that's in you. As it says, Carrickeel, Carramore, Ballygawley. Unfortunately, Carrickeel and Ballygawley, them two was raided at one stage, and people went in and took stones out of them and destroyed them. I suppose we have to be looking as well as Queen Maeve's Mountain and the works that's needed up there, and the ongoing concern with that. But I just want to highlight, is it something of interest to you that you might be thinking of including Inishmurray Island? You know, the importance of what's out in Inishmurray Island as well. And as I says, if it's about tourism and about what we have here, we need to be looking at the wider picture of Inishmurray and Queen Maeve and all the things that bring people to this area, especially Carramore sells itself. As I says, what we have there. There was a dig done there by Stefan back a couple of years ago where we came across one of the dices, and they reckon that the dice was as old as the Egyptian tombs. So there is a lot of stuff there that we need to be looking at, and I welcome the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Councillor Maguire. Sorry. No, there's a problem with the audio there. Councillor Baker indicated.
Thank you, Cahill. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'd just like to compliment Robert and his team. We're lucky to have the calibre of these people that's involved, and all I want to say is whatever the council has done, so thank you. Keep up the good work.
Can I just ask maybe to mute your microphone? Robert, is your microphone on mute? Can you mute your microphone for a moment, please, just to bring in all the talkers? We're getting a bit of feedback. Yeah.
Here,
Councillor Baker.
Yeah, sorry now. All I want to say is just to compliment Robert and his team, and we're lucky to have such a team of people that has huge knowledge in this field. And I think as a council, we need to support them in whatever way we can to progress this. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Taylor.
I just thank Robert for the presentation, and thank himself and Stefan for the work they're doing as well. I'm delighted to see Carrickeel and the Hill of Caves that are right beside me there. There's really untold and untouched potential in all them areas. And you know, from a tourism, from the profile of the county and a tourism profile, it's huge. I happened to be in Sweden a number of years ago with Sorore, and they have a lot of World Heritage sites there. And from the point of view of how actually busy it was from the point of tourism, it was unbelievable. So I definitely welcome what you were doing, and you have my support in every way, and good luck with the project.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I welcome the application. I think it's a very positive development for the county and the sites. I welcome that the site in Ballygawley has been included. There's very little promotion has been done of this or any work in the past. So hopefully this will attract some investment going forward. I'd like to thank Robert and his team for the report and the presentation, and wish them best of luck with the application going forward. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, members, and apologies there, Councillor Maguire.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ciarán, and thank you to Robert, Stefan and the rest of the group for the presentation. I know that you've been working for 5 years and obviously in your professional capacity for much longer, and have done Trojan work into preserving and increasing our knowledge of the incredible wealth that we have in Neolithic terms around this peninsula. I think this is a particularly exciting initiative. I brought a motion to the council over a year ago asking that we would support this initiative, so it's wonderful to see it come to this point today. I've been very fortunate. I've visited 45 UNESCO World Heritage sites around the world, and it is a remarkable thing to bring to any community. Heritage tourism has a huge potential for Sligo and for this country, and the fact that there are only 13 sites in Europe speaks to the high quality of an offering that we have here in Sligo. I very much welcome the points that you've made, Robert, in relation to the living landscape, and the fact that this requires community support and that communication with the communities is a key factor. I think that's essential in order that people understand what this means, what the potential impact might be on them, and obviously the benefits that it would have, not only for tourism but also for the preservation of the monuments, which unfortunately we have seen impacted by the increase in tourism, particularly Knocknaray. The cairn has been damaged, quartz has been taken from the tomb, and we really want to see that stopped. So if this initiative could go some way to preserving those, it would be fantastic. I noticed that you mentioned funding, Robert. I'm just wondering if you could let us know where you would hope that funding to come from. You mentioned that it might go towards preserving the sites and also to the landowners. And also that this tentative site list would provide a management plan for the sites. That I think would be very welcome to communities as well as the landowners. And I just like to wish you well into the future and let you know of my continued support. I think that this would be an incredible achievement, both for Sligo County Council and of course for the Sligo Neolithic group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mullaney. Councillor Mullaney, do you wish to speak on this? No. Gerard, you're on mute if you want to talk. No. I want to thank Stefan and Robert for taking part. Unfortunately, time constraints are against us that our full meeting has to be finished before 12 o'clock. So unfortunately, we can't get as much feedback today as we'd like on the subject, only that we wish you well on behalf of all the members and that we'll certainly look forward to working with you on this project. Thanks very much, and thanks to the members for their participation. Move on so to item number 14, to note Sligo County Council submission on the National Development Plan. Notice number 15, to note the report of ethics register under section 174 of the Local Government Act. Noted. Number 16, to consider Sligo County Council's participation in the Covenant of Mayors in order to formalise and underpin our commitment to positive climate action. Proposed Councillor Bree, second Councillor Boyle. Number 17 to note it. Right, we're moving on so to deferred motions, and again, with your agreement, members, it's nearly 10 to 11. If we can keep the questions as short, and we'll move through try and get the full agenda covered. Councillor O'Grady, can I get a seconder? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I'll be very brief. But I suppose nurses and student nurses in this country are historically treated unfairly by successive governments. And, you know, it rings false when student nurses' pay was being discussed in the Dáil, that they got a clap. And actually, people stood up and gave them a standing ovation. But when the salary was mentioned, it was voted down. And a clap sufficed. That was the payment they received. Now, the issue of exploitation of student nurses is not a new one in this country. During the first wave of the pandemic, student nurses were employed as healthcare assistants, and they played a very important role in the provision of services, bridging gaps, especially in hospitals that were poorly staffed. And I want to acknowledge the Minister for Health at the time, who put in place that student nurses were paid as healthcare assistants during that time and had the wisdom to do so. But all this now has changed. And as we speak, student nurses' education also has been suspended until there will be a review of it in February the 8th. The reason being that their tutors have been employed to the front line. So I am requesting that Sligo County Council write to Minister Donnelly and the Department of Higher Education, requesting that they immediately look at remuneration for first, second and third year student nurses working during the pandemic. I am quite fully support that when things are normal, they continue as students do continue. But I think during a pandemic and the work that they were doing, they need to be paid, as was done by the previous Minister for Health. Thank you, Cathaoirleach, for giving me.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, no, I think Councillor Grady has summed it up well. I think we need to look after the student nurses, particularly over the pandemic. We've all done placements in college. I done two during my 6 years at Sligo University, but this is different, particularly during the pandemic. There is a requirement to have the student nurses in place, and there's no doubt of the huge work they've carried out on all our behalf. So I support Councillor O'Grady's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Casserly.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Just to support the motion and to say that this year has been extraordinary. We've all seen how hard both student nurses and nurses have been working. At the start, they stepped up to the plate, many without access to proper PPE. I know a lot who have to live in separate quarters from their family members in order to reduce the risk of spread of the virus. So now we need to show our appreciation for their incredible work and support nurses however we can. So I'd just like to support the motion with the introduction of an appropriate clinical place and bursary for student nurses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire.
Thank you. I won't repeat what my council colleagues have said, but agree wholeheartedly. I think particularly given the focus that we're have at the minute in a pandemic, it's an extraordinary circumstance. The nurses are required to put themselves in harm's way every single day, and to expect them to do so on effectively a voluntary basis is unacceptable, and they need to be reimbursed for their work and their time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilroy.
Again, to support it fully, I'm the parent of a student nurse at the moment. She's in first year, and just slight correction to the record, their training hasn't stopped completely. The practical part has stopped, but the study is still going on. Their lectures are still going on online, but the practicals, which is a hugely important part, has been suspended, as Councillor O'Grady said, but just that they are still working away, training and getting their lectures. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I just want to support it, and also I've been talking to nurse students as they have to give up part-time jobs as well. That mean to take on this, and the biggest concern here is that mean on the 3rd of December, it's a pity Fianna Fáil voted against the motion in the Dáil to pay nurses €14 an hour, the same as a healthcare assistant, and what they've been paid early in March in the March agreement. I'm delighted to see that the Sinn Féin motion on this subject in January. And we should call now on the Minister for Health to publish the report on student nurse and midwives pay this week. Students have already need for allowances and rent, and a lot of them are dependent on how to get to and from these areas as well because of the low money they're on. So I think that there's a need for it. And at the end of the day, we don't want to be clapping them on the back. I think we need to be putting money in their pockets.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Can you unmute?
No, just to support the motion as well, you know, and support what everyone has said about student nurses and all nurses. You know, listen, we're finding it very, very difficult throughout this pandemic in the roles we have. So I can only imagine, and from talking to student nurses and nurses in general, it's a very, very difficult time for them. It's certainly one that they will never, ever, ever forget. And I thank them for all the work that they are doing. And I support the motion. I don't know what was going on when it was voted down on the Dáil, but you know, I certainly would like to pledge my support to the student nurses and our nurses and support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Myself, I want to concur with what has been said and I support the motion, so that motion is agreed.
Can I just come back?
Councillor Grady, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I would like to thank my colleagues for their support and for their appreciation of work done. And just for the record, Councillor Gilroy, I said their clinical placement, which has been completely affected by the pandemic. So it's their clinical education that I spoke about. So just for the record to put that in place. But again, thank you most sincerely, all of you, for your support.
Thanks, Councillor Grady. Moving on so to motion number 19, Councillor Gilroy. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Walsh. Now we have an amendment or a change of wording on that. Can I read it out?
You can, or I'll do it myself.
You can read it, Councillor Gilroy.
It's just to add in a line that Sligo County Council write to the Northern and Western Regional Assembly to request that they oversee this collaboration and convene a meeting between representatives of the three authorities with a view to establishing this platform of collaboration. So, is that agreed? Yeah.
That agreed, members?
Yeah. So if I could just say a few words on it, and I don't want to take I welcome the response and the commitment to collaborate with Leitrim County Council and the NWRA in implementing RPO 5.3 of the Sligo County Development Plan as per our amendment variation number 1 last November. The response that I got, I suppose, says that it's the NWRA's report or the plan, the RSES, but it's not. It's our plan. In the same way as the Sligo County Development Plan belongs to every citizen, the regional plan belongs to every citizen as well. This is an opportunity that Sligo should not, and Sligo should not leave this opportunity behind for us to be forced out with this type of thing. We have history in this area in the development of the Cleaver lands many years ago as a regional park, but this is on a much bigger scale and it's something that crosses county lines, and I think I welcome the fact that Sligo County Council is willing to get involved in the collaboration, and I would hope that that moves on. So if the motion is accepted, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. You second it?
Yeah, I want to be associated with the motion. I know Councillor Gilroy has raised this previously, I think, in the Sligo Drumcliff municipal area, and I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Fox, and then Councillor Bree.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, I just want to support the motion, and I look forward to the report being brought before us here in July.
Thank you, Councillor Bree.
Councillor Gilroy is aware of the significant benefits and increase in tourism numbers which could be brought to North Sligo if it was designated a national recreation area along with North Leitrim. He's been lobbying particularly for such an initiative since he was appointed as a member of the Northern and Western Regional Assembly. In December, Councillor Gilroy was unanimously elected as chairman of the Strategic Planning Area Committee for the Border region, and I have no doubt but that he'll certainly be pushing strongly for the project in the months ahead. And I feel that that's important, that this council should work with the Regional Assembly and with Leitrim County Council to establish a mechanism to progress the project. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to be associated with the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Moving on so to the main motions. Motion number 20, Councillor Casserly. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Again, I'll be brief with this. The beam was designed in conjunction with the European Commission to try and provide cash to beef farmers that had their income decimated as a result of Brexit. Farmers who currently do not meet the organic nitrogen reduction condition of the beef exceptional aid measures risk losing as much as €40 million in payments. Some 14,072 beam participants are currently meeting the 5% requirement, with a further 967 farmers reporting a reduction of between 4 and 5%. So the remaining farmers have until the 30th of June 2021 to meet the scheme requirements, and there is concern that some farmers will have to pay back money due to missing targets. The 40 million at risk represents more than half of the 77.72 million paid out to 33,000 farmers under the measure. The ICSA has already called for the nitrates reduction term within beam to be scrapped, and it is unacceptable that many beam participants cannot be sure whether they will be penalised. The payment was meant to reflect the extreme hardship suffered by farmers due to Brexit factors beyond their control. Penalties of up to 100% of the payment undo all the good and undermine the initial logic to support beef farmers. And there's also potential of further huge market disruption in the spring, warning that traditional spring buyers may be unable to do so. So I'm just asking for you to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. That motion is agreed. Moving on, motion number 21. Now, motion 21 and 22, there's some similarities in them. Do you want to take them separately? Yeah, that's great. Councillor Casserly, can I get seconder for your motion? Councillor Clark, yeah.
The motion I have worded slightly, and particularly just as a result of what's been happening very recently, and I have changed it to include to seek a timeline for preparation plans for continued integration of services in accordance with the new Shared Ireland Initiative, with a review for a referendum subsequent to an independence referendum taking place in Scotland. We cannot rush headlong towards an early border poll. It needs to be handled with the utmost care and sensitivity, and focus in the first instance on those areas of clear mutual benefit that are least threatening to all concerned. The All-Ireland economy, North-South cooperation on infrastructure, the environment, energy and climate change, combating crime together, working with young people, joint research projects between universities, promoting cross-border initiatives in civil society and the arts, and so on. These are all areas which promise great things in the early years after the Good Friday Agreement, and have dropped way down policy agendas, and since the UK Brexit referendum in 2016 have fallen away to almost nothing. So detailed discussions are needed to take place over the next few years to come to an agreement that suits all concerned. Thank you. So I'm asking you to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Seconded. That's agreed. Councillor Healy.
Yeah, I support an independent Scotland, but I was disappointed in 2014 with the failure of the referendum. But I don't think we should be looking at other countries to decide the future of Ireland. And we need to be, Ireland inspired other countries to seek their independence, and that's the way we should be looking at it.
Thanks. Councillor Gibbons.
Just in relation to it, and I've listened to this, how would you call it, very selective wording that went on with this motion compared to the original motion. And the one thing that I want to say it here, look at the last number of polls that has been there. The majority of the people within the north of Ireland is in favour of a border poll. It's been seen even only last week in relation to it. And the unionists have even accepted this. And isn't it, how would I put it, isn't it very strange kind of even with the atmosphere that's in it today that we have an American president that has always been in favour of a united Ireland and is in 100% support of a border poll, and that you have his surrounding cabinet is of the same mind. And now we have the unionists within the North, the major parties, wanting to sit down now and negotiate nearly the terms of a border poll. They want to sit down, talk about it. They want full consultation. A few years ago, what are we talking about? 12 months ago, wouldn't have even been thought of it. We are closer to a border poll now than we ever were. And do you know something? It's every Irishman's right to want a united Ireland. That is the reality to it. It is there, it's in us, it's instinctive with every party within this country. It's instinctive with every person within this country. And I am seriously in relation to this. I was very disappointed to see the way that this motion has been watered down from the original.
Thank you. Councillor Bray.
The only comment I'll say, it's daft to be relating the issue of a border poll in Ireland with a referendum in Scotland. People of Scotland will decide their own future, and it's none of our business. I wish them well. I hope they do become independent, but it's a matter for themselves.
Okay, thank you, members. Moving on, so that motion is agreed. Councillor Healy, second. Councillor Bray.
Cathaoirleach, under the terms of the Belfast Agreement, a border poll is the only way partition can be ended. The struggle for an end to partition has always been a democratic one. Ireland was not partitioned because it suited the needs of the Irish people, but because it suited British imperialism and the British ruling class. The British state has always relied on exploiting artificial divisions among the Irish people, divisions that they nurtured and have fostered ever since partition was imposed by force of arms 100 years ago in 1921. The Northern state has failed in every way. The ongoing political and economic instability of the Stormont Assembly to enact even the slightest progressive change in the interests of the people of the 6 counties is worth noting. Its most recent inability to unite on even the most basic of public health issues in combating COVID-19 tells its own story. Indeed, the cross-border spread of COVID clearly illustrates the need for an all-Ireland health service and for an all-Ireland response to the virus. We now need to see the initiation of real, inclusive and comprehensive debate on a national scale to develop proposals for United Ireland, including a commitment to the achievement of constitutional change, which will be rights-based and which will protect the civil and religious liberties of all traditions and identities on the island. For we are not merely talking about the unity of 32 counties, we are talking about the unity of all the people of this nation, Catholic, Protestant and the centre. And we now need to go to our unionist fellow countrymen and women and engage with them as to what kind of Ireland and what kind of new republic we want, even if many of them don't want to hear it. We have to give them guarantees about their rights and their religious and cultural beliefs. We have to make clear to them that we are not interested in erasing a line on a map and pretending that everything will sort itself out thereafter. We must say to them that we are sick to the teeth of tribal politics. We are still liberating ourselves from the remnants of a narrow Catholic-dominated confessional state, as they must liberate themselves from notions of a Protestant state for a Protestant people. And while the power for calling a vote on the border poll rests with the British government, I believe that the Irish government should now commence the process of seeking a commitment and a timeline for a referendum on Irish unity, so as people north and south can prepare for a new united Ireland and a new republic that serves the interests of all its citizens. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you, Councillor Healy.
Yeah, the Good Friday Agreement, which was voted throughout Ireland for provision of a border poll, both COVID and Brexit has demonstrated very clearly to the people that we need an all-Ireland approach to deal with this issue. Anything else would be bonkers and cannot work. An all-Ireland with a border is bad for health and bad for the economy. And I support this motion, and I think that a border poll, we should be looking within the next 5 years to have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Micheál Martin, after only a week, his Taoiseach ruled out a border poll, saying that would be divisive. Under provisions of the Belfast Agreement, the British government has the power to call a border poll. But with the Irish government saying they do not want one, they have got cover to refuse. This is a disgraceful rejection of democracy. People have every right to aspire to a united Ireland. They should be able to put their case before the people of the North and the South. The unification of Ireland would require writing a new constitution, and so the people on both sides of the Irish border should be consulted. Martin's claim that a poll would be divisive is pure nonsense. The same argument was deployed to stop a referendum on gay marriage and on repeal. Every referendum divides opinion. Every call for change divides opinion. But this is not a reason to hold up democracy. The reality is Northern Ireland is becoming an increasingly unviable state. It relies on British subvention. The notion of a Protestant parliament for Protestant people is dying, just as major movement for social change has wrought Catholic domination in the South. Winning a border poll to end partition requires politics that advocates for full transformation of Ireland. It will mean a different type of economy, one that puts people first, one that is not a tax haven for multinational companies. This will ensure United Ireland benefits all workers regardless of their background, so we can all live in peace, having one tradition dictate to another. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons.
Go here, the coalition government need to start planning for change in the nature of our relationship with Northern Ireland. I would suggest that the description of a border poll that is also mentioned in the motion and the effects of partition on Sligo and the surrounding counties is not the correct approach to speaking of Irish unification. I would ask that any discussion around partition has to be much broader than the border counties, but must include all 32 counties being involved in the unity referendum. All the citizens of this country also need to have clarity on all the political parties on the island of what the position regarding reunification is. It will come as no great surprise to anyone that Sinn Féin sees history of partition of our country as a disaster and something that needs to end. The position of other political parties in the country is at best unclear and to many cases hostile towards engagement in any open debate. The leader of the Fine Gael party, Mr. Leo Varadkar, referred to his party members based in Belfast as being overseas. While his party colleague, Senator Regina Doherty, has said that the inhabitants of the 26 counties alone constitutes the Irish people. Clearly, a lot of work needs to be done with the Fine Gael ranks. For longer than I care to remember, and the many fine Fianna Fáil colleagues that I have worked with, both on Sligo Borough Council and Sligo County Council, while I disagree with many of their policies and actions while in power, I always hoped that when the opportunity arose, that Fianna Fáil would not be found wanting when it came to the national question. But with the current direction being taken by their party leader, Mr. Micheál Martin, and his hostility and the partitionist attitude being shown by him and others in Fianna Fáil, I have great doubts about their intentions. The coalition government of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Green Party must plan for a new constitutional reality by convening a citizens' assembly and publishing a green paper on Irish unity. We will all have a stake in this debate and its outcome. It is past the time for the Irish government to fulfil their constitutional and Good Friday Agreement obligations by planning for a unity referendum. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Cahirla. This is an incredibly sensitive area, and I note that my colleagues in Sinn Féin referred to the Friday Agreement, and we're all incredibly grateful for the work that was done in relation to that agreement and for the peace that has led in our country since that. But I'm also very aware that Sinn Féin abstained from that vote. And they didn't sign the Good Friday Agreement, which they laud and claim now. This border poll is preemptive, and it could be destructive to the peace that we have enjoyed, and for that reason I will not be agreeing with it. The peace that we have enjoyed for the last 20 years is precious, it needs to be nurtured, and we need to work together as a whole island to establish what our future will be. The idea of pushing a border poll at this moment would be destructive, and I do not think would assist us in ultimately what we all hope is to live in a shared island where all parties have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy.
Yeah, again, like a lot of the others, this will be a divisive issue, and I note that we're seeking a timeline for preparation of a plan for a border poll, and that's a big difference between looking for a border poll now, and I think that could be acceptable to a lot of people, that we start planning for it and seeing, because it will affect every one of us in different ways. It will affect every community. It even affects political parties and how they operate, whether they operate as in one jurisdiction or in both, whether they're an All-Ireland party or whether they're a 26 county and a 6 county party when it comes to political donations. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Haley.
Just through the chair. The most important thing is that we're talking about it. That's the most important thing. And as I says, if we don't set a guideline, if we don't set something, we're never going to reach it. So it's important that if we're going to achieve a united Ireland, give people their choice of having a vote, like the Good Friday Agreement, we need to be talking about it, and we need to set a date, and that way then we work to that date. We give people an opportunity to have their say and move things on. There is peace in Ireland, but we need to work on it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, quickly now, because, yeah.
It's a fantastic and happy welcome to have this debate today in the chamber, right? As little as 12 months ago, this wouldn't have happened. In fairness, and that we are talking about it, and it is welcome. But some of the comments that was made in relation that Sinn Féin didn't support the Good Friday Agreement, Sinn Féin was part of that whole process that was put together. And it's all right for somebody to sit back there and throw out this rubbish out to the floor. At the end of the day, the way forward is progress. United Ireland is inevitable, and it is as well to happen now, instead of dragging it out and dragging it out and dragging it out.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Maguire, I'll just let you in and we'll finish on this because it's nearly 1:15.
Sorry, there was a comment made there about throwing out rubbish. What I stated was factual. Of course, Sinn Féin were part of the process of the Good Friday Agreement. The process wouldn't have been possible unless all parties were involved. But Sinn Féin did abstain from the vote. They did not sign the agreement. I know that's something that some councillors might have difficulty swallowing, but it's the fact. And I'm not speaking rubbish when I state that.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on? So to that motion is agreed, and we have one exemption. Councillor Maguire, is that correct? Moving on, so to is there just one abstention? Motion number 23, Councillor Maguire. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Boyle.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I note the report and thank Ms Kilcannon for seeking that report from Irish Water in relation to the upgrading of pipes in Strandhill. It's disappointing that they don't have funding for it this year in the 2021 budget. There are an additional, in excess of 20 houses being built along that route this year. So I would ask that we would write again to Irish Water asking them to consider it in their budget for next year to make sure that all of those householders can have fresh, clean water. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Boyle. Moving on, so motion number 24, just to inform members, it's nearly 11:15, so just giving you a time check. Seconded by Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chair. They are spreading the blame, so it sticks thinly. This is how one survivor described Micheál Martin's disgraceful apology to survivors of the mother and baby homes. The political establishment have honed a tried and tested method for dealing with scandals. To set up a commission of inquiry but insist that any evidence gathered cannot be used for criminal prosecutions. Then they do an apology claiming that we in Irish society were to blame, knowing that mere words change nothing. In the last 20 years, almost every Taoiseach has done their set piece apology. What is truly shocking is the sheer length of time the current scandal has been brewing and the level of obstruction deployed by the state. When many women were silenced for decades in the train of events that led to this commission of inquiry date back to 1975. In that year, 2 children found the bones of skeletal remains near a council estate in Tuam. The local Gardaí immediately put out a statement saying the remains were those who perished of the famine in 1847. A priest was called to bless the site and was rapidly sealed. The discovery, however, prompted local historian Catherine Corliss to do research. She noted that a staggering number of children had died in the mother and baby home run by the Bon Secours nuns in town, but yet she could find no death certificates for the 796 children. We now know that these babies died because of systemic malnutrition. Catholic fundamentalists have decreed that they were born out of sin and both their mothers had to be punished. The mothers paid for their sins by painful births, and then they had bonded with their babies for a few weeks, would see them forcibly removed for adoption. The religious orders profited by collecting money from adoptions and receiving regular contributions afterwards to the two grateful parents. Yet despite Catherine Corliss's painstaking research, it has taken the state 9 years to even publish the report. It was drafted by two conservative academics and a former circuit judge who had been married to the founder of the Progressive Democrats, Ireland's first openly neoliberal party. They were never going to draw a connection between Ireland's dark fundamentalist past and its current deep-skinned progressive image. But the connections are there for all who want to look. They're evident in the fact that records of survivors are still sealed. A deal was done with the Catholic hierarchy that in return for access to records, a veil of secrecy would be drawn over the affair. The link between the past and present are still evident in the notorious Woods deal. This was an indemnity deal agreed by Fianna Fáil Minister Michael Woods in 2002, whereby the state took over the cost of redress for victims of residential institutions. It has cost the taxpayer over $1 billion. This is the meaning of Merton's statement when we were all to blame. And what of the Bon Secours? That we were all to blame. They have moved on from burial of babies in storage pits now to running the largest private hospital networks in the country. In the past, they have served the wealthy by shaming women to frighten them into submission before priests and politicians. Today, they still serve their needs for a fee. It is time we ended this charade, and instead of apologies, we want action. And I'm calling for a criminal investigation into religious orders that caused the deaths and suffering of all the children. And just in the last couple of days, it has emerged that 4,000 children were sent overseas for adoption in the space of 30 years. That's 4,000 children. And 550 tapes of survivor testimony has been deleted without transcripts. And this is after been, like I said, brewing for 20, 30 years. I ask, what are our ministers doing in Dublin when they're deleting this? That's 550 tapes of survivor testimony deleted. They'll never be seen again. So I ask for your support in this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bree.
Look, the legacy of the mother and baby homes is one of shocking crimes perpetrated against women and children by church and state. The survivors have given testimony as how they were physically abused, sexually assaulted, forced to work without pay, and how children died of malnutrition and neglect. And while the Commission of Investigation report has revealed an appalling litany of human rights abuses, it has failed to properly acknowledge and redress the suffering of survivors, and its recommendations certainly fall short of ensuring the government meets its human rights obligations. The report affirms what survivors have said about poor conditions, forced labour akin to modern slavery, enforced disappearances, adoptions without consent, and the physical and emotional abuse of women and children. The level of infant mortality revealed in the report was shocking in the extreme. The dark history of these institutions and of a church and state which fostered them reflects the oppressive and deeply misogynistic attitude of a reactionary Catholic Church and an equally reactionary, compliant and right-wing political establishment. It's now clear, Cathaoirleach, that there must be full redress and compensation for the survivors. One element of the right to redress in human rights is the right to justice. And this means that the state must hold those who commit human rights abuses accountable, including through criminal investigation and prosecution where evidence allows. I now fully support the call by survivors for a standalone unit to be established within An Garda Síochána to oversee a full criminal investigation into the horrific abuses and crimes inflicted on women and children in these institutions. I formally second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor McSharry.
Yes, Cathaoirleach, and I think I want to applaud Councillor O'Boyle, and you can hear the passion in his voice, and Councillor Bree, and all the other TDs and public representatives that have spoken. I think since we've learned what has come out in recent times, Cathaoirleach, has shocked us all to the core. And I can't really put it any further than that. But obviously, redress and, as Councillor Bree has suggested, that there should be some sort of a criminal investigation. And if people can be held to account, including government, including any members of the clergy, any members of the medical profession, or anybody who oversaw and sat idly by when these things happened, because every story is just so shocking. And I think it's shocked us all in society.
And certainly, as Councillor Boyle has alluded to, it's now time to speak up for those that had no voice. That's the problem. They had no voice. Thanks, Gerda.
Thank you. And that motion is agreed. Moving on, motion number 25, Councillor McSharry. Can I get a seconder? Councillor
Thank you, Caherlick, and I'll be brief. And I note the response, and I welcome the response. But I have to say that the behaviour of Barna Waste in the estate at this hour is outrageous, and it's objectionable in the extreme, and it's totally unacceptable. And when confronted by the residents in the area, they were told that if they start early, they finish early, and it's unacceptable. It's not right. And this is the second time, because I had to bring a similar motion before the Sligo County Council back in February 19, where the same waste collector was collecting in an area in Sligo and Ardcairn, sometimes as early as 5 a.m. in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. We know that there's a lot of elderly people in this area. There's a lot of young families in this area, and to come in, before 6 o'clock in the morning, it's unacceptable. It's not fair, and they need to be reprimanded. And I do know that we have a very skilled wordsmith in Mr. Kilreevy over there, and obviously his last round of letters worked, and hopefully these letters will work. But it's important as a local authority and as an enforcement authority that they know that we're not going to stand idly by. And also, I'm heartened to see that they will put the bins back, because what's happening, and I've seen it time and time again, they pick up the bins, they drop them, and they just fling them out anywhere. And it's not right, and it's not fair, especially when residents in the area are doing the best in this regard. Thank you, Gerda.
Thank you. Councillor Boyle. Thank you. Motion agreed. Motion number 26.
And second that.
Actually, in relation to this motion, I wish to withdraw this.
Put on your mic, sorry, just for the other one.
I wish to withdraw this motion. I thank Councillor Gilroy for his support. I wish to withdraw this motion, but while withdrawing this motion, I want to state publicly and clearly on behalf of the Residents Association in Tonafobble that they do wish to commemorate and honour the memory of former Mayor Martin Keaveney in the area, and they look forward to working with Sligo County Council in this regard.
Thank you. Motion number 27.
I'll second that motion.
Second by Councillor Gibbon.
Thank you, Caherlick. In relation to this motion, and I can just, I want to thank Jimmy and Kevin for allowing me to put up the photographs, because I think it's when you see it, you believe it better. But as you can see there, the fencing along I suppose due to what can only be described as aggressive coastal erosion, which we can't do much about at the moment, that the fencing is either damaged, it's on the ground, or it's so low that a small child could cross it. And as you can see from the photographs, the dunes are being damaged. It is unsafe. It's only a matter of time before there's some sort of a tragedy out there. And I think now, while there is an opportunity that the fencing should be replaced at the very least, I don't know how much that will cost, but it can't be exorbitant in terms of costs. And I think we need to do it before, as soon as possible, really, because as you can see, there is signage there from Sligo County Council diverting people over to what is a very popular walk in Shelley Valley, and it says beyond the fencing, but unfortunately the fencing is either so low that a small child could cross it, or it's down on the ground. So I would call on Sligo County Council, and I do note the report, to prioritise this issue as a matter of urgency. As we all know, any of us that spent time out there young, I remember a coastline where the walkways were very clear across the dunes. Unfortunately, due to coastal erosion, they're almost obliterated now at this stage. I know there's similar problems in Ross's Point, and I did raise again in February 2019 a proposition that Sligo County Council would consider rock armour in the area, and I did ask that a photograph would be put up, and as people can see, that is rock armour that has been put in an area to try and control control coastal erosion. So I think that we need to consider options. Personally, I know that there is people in the area that aren't really I suppose, supportive of rock armour, but the reality is that it seems to be getting worse and worse year in, year out, and I think the local authority can do something now in terms of fencing. So I would ask the council to support me in this regard.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. Just a second. Yeah, Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Cahirla. There are a group, the Coastal Erosion Subcommittee of the Strandhill Community Development Association, who have been working with the County Council in relation to this issue, and we are looking into the area of potential rock armour. Just in relation to the fencing, yes, some of it has blown down, and obviously that's due to storm damage. Just to let you know that where it's actually at a very low point, that's where the fencing has been successful. The purpose of the fencing is to try and entrap sand to increase the depth and the height of the sand dune. So where it is lower, that's actually a sign that that fencing has worked. But I do agree with Councillor McSharry that it could be reinstated, or we could put more of it in places. This is something that I've been working with the local engineers on since my election, and will continue to do so. There are other options. Rock armour is not what might be suitable to all. There are some who believe that the rock armour that was put in to protect the water treatment sewage plant actually assisted in the demolition of the large dune south of the village. So, you know, what we really need is a survey of the area to look at what the best engineering design is to try and prevent coastal erosion. But ultimately we are working literally against the tide and also against Mother Nature, who's an incredibly strong force. So what we need is technical and expertise in this area to tell us what is the best option here. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Motion agreed. Moving on so to motion 28. Councillor Casterly had her hand up.
Thank you, Cahirla. And this is something I've raised. I think it was one of my first motions after being elected. I had a motion down in July 2019 in relation to the footpaths between Castledargan and Ballygawley Village, or lack of. And at that point there was an agreement in place that there will be a design done for this work. And I know that particular engineer has left, and there was a gap in the design office for a period. But I note the reply, but I wouldn't be that much welcome to it. There's no draft design in place for a scheme at this location. I'm wondering why government have opened schemes nationally to address projects such as this, the active travel scheme. I note it says Sligo County Council will be in contact with the NTA to discuss potential works, but this is a project that this scheme, that a project like this fits into the scheme. We all know what the scheme says. It's to support high quality cycling and walking infrastructure in our towns and villages. So I would ask Sligo County Council to ensure that this project is included in the active travel scheme. It's not something I'm going to be letting go. I've raised it back in July 2019, and I would ask the acting director of services to ensure that there is a draft design in place as soon as possible. I've discussed this with landowners and the engineer over the past few months, and there's a very good response to this project. It's a win-win for everyone. It's a win-win for the landowners and the homeowners. It's a win-win for the local resort. It's a win-win for the community and the people in the village, and it's a win-win for the huge amount of traffic and cyclists and walkers that use this access on a regular basis along the R290. So I would ask the Acting Director of Services to revisit this and look at getting a draft design in place sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Casterly.
Yes, I won't repeat what Councillor Walsh has said. Just on seconding the motion, I think back in 2015, I had asked for for this project to be started. I spoke to residents out there at the time. It's a very busy location for tourists and for locals alike, and it definitely needs to be upgraded because it is a dangerous piece of road there between the village and the hotel. So just like to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Healy.
I want to welcome the motion as well. It's something that I've raised on a number of occasions as well. I suppose the R29 Action Group have done great work in that area. As I says, we got pedestrian signs put up there because of the concerns of the safety of it. One of the issues that the residents in the area did raise at the time as well is under the mini development plan of Ballygawley, it doesn't bring in Castlelergan in on it. And if you look at the size of Ballygawley, they won't integrate Castlelergan in with the village, and I think that's something serious that we should look at, because that affects their population as well as everything else, and it separates them from the community. So as I say, it's important that this footpath goes ahead, and it's important that I know that talking to a lot of the residents and landowners in the area as well, they're positive about it moving forward. I think it's something that's badly needed. But like that again, there's a lot more work needed on the R29 as well. The footpath is welcome. It'll bring about safety, but I think there's other works that needs to be as well to be addressed on this road, and it's been raised many a time in this chamber with the Minister and everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion agreed. Now, members, we're moving on to motion number 29. Just on that, seconded by Councillor Healy, can I just inform the members it's 11:30. We have a lot of motions to get through, so it's with your full cooperation we'll get the agenda finished, or if not, we'll have to look at coming back another day. So, not putting pressure on anybody. I don't want to cut anyone short. I'm trying to give everyone to be as fair as I can, but if you can limit the speaking time, hopefully we'll get through it.
Thank you, Kerlock, and I'll be brief. It is what it says. There's a piece of footpath out at Advailed, the Drumahare Road outside Ballantor. There's a disconnect in it, and there's a huge volume of houses out there. It'll be the main to and from Ballantor Hall on that side of the village. There has been a lot of work done in Ballantor, the Ballygawley side, pedestrian crossing ramps, and the Sligo side will be upgraded later this year. But this is the end piece of the village. It's the missing part. Residents have campaigned for this for a long period of time. I held a call with them recently. There was an travel scheme. It will be considered to the footpath improvement scheme, and I also want to note that Ballygawley and Ballantor wasn't included in the footpath improvement scheme last year, in its first year, so I would welcome its inclusion in this year's scheme. I welcome the reply, and it's important we get the money to do this piece of infrastructure as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy.
Yeah, I welcome this motion. It was one of the areas that was highlighted at a public consultation meeting we had with the residents in the village on a number of the works we got done, which was the ramps coming into the village and all the extra works that was done, and that's greatly appreciated. But unfortunately, we will not, having talked to the engineer already, we made 3 applications already, the residents of this area, 2 under Clore funding was unsuccessful, and we made a 3rd one under the active travel scheme, and it won't work on this. So the only alternative we have is the footpath improvement scheme. So I think that we should prioritise this area for, and it's something that I've raised here at the last meeting of the Sligo Cliffney area. I raised it at that meeting, and I asked the engineer at the time as well that this needs to be addressed. I think that this will finish off Ballantor as well, because what's happening as well is that we have cars passing out each other after they come over the ramp. And it's a dangerous area, so as I says, it needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. That's motion agreed. Motion number 30, Councillor Casserly, second Councillor Walsh. Councillor Casserly, do you wish to say anything on that?
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to welcome the report and the attention that will be given to this. I'll be brief on that. Just recently, there seems to be a huge amount of reports of faulty lights, particularly in Sligo town. And maybe it's because there are an awful lot more people out walking at present at night time. I don't know, but I'm just happy that works will be carried out and that a report or an audit will be carried out on that. I have to say that when Electric Skyline are contacted, they do carry out the work very quickly and very professionally. And I'd also like to welcome the lights that have been repaired at Cleaver, at the running park and all along Dooley Park as well. So just to welcome that, and to, I suppose, to say that I know I was speaking to the engineer about it, work, and he was saying that there is somebody almost working full time on that, which is great. But I suppose it's just to have an audit, because there's a lot of lights around Markvich Road that seem to be going out and that need repair very regularly. So I welcome the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wall.
Yeah, thank you. I support the motion. We have some gaps in service provision of lighting throughout the county. My own village, one. I know the Acton CE is fully aware of it. And can I just check with the Acton CE that the rollout of the LED transition is on course to begin in Q4 of this year? Or has there been any delays with that contract being led by Mayo Sligo County Council?
We're awaiting an update as to that. I'd probably be surprised if it actually starts this year, given COVID and the impact of that. I suspect it'll be very late this year, and I won't be surprised if it rolls into 2022 at this stage. We are the last of the regions for the works to be carried out, and certainly at the moment, the project nationally is behind schedule.
Thank you, Councillor O'Grady.
I would like to support Councillor Casserly's motion, and also to acknowledge that when Electric Skyline is contacted, the majority of times they respond. But for the last 4 months, there has been 4 poles near the roundabout on the Pierce Road that have been reported time and time again, and nothing has been done about them. That's number 65, 66, 67 and 69 on the Pierce Road. And I would ask that I have highlighted it to them, and I would ask that maybe the engineer would have a look and have that moved on, seeing that there's some issue holding that up. And also the top of Tracy Avenue, and I've also been on to them, opposite Central Shop, or just up from Central Shop. So I'd like to support the motion, and again acknowledge the work that is done, but certainly the Pierce Road area is a huge issue at the moment up near the Carrow roundabout. Thank you, Cahir.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbons.
Cahir, I'd have to support the motion in relation to, but the one thing I would say, contacting the Electric Skyline, in the past, any poles that I've identified, they have been very quick to come out to got them done, except there is 2 poles on the Strandhill Road, and I've highlighted this, and I do know other people have highlighted it long before I have, and over the last 2 years I think they're out. One side is the town side of the bridge, and the other is the other side of the bridge, 2 poles nearly next to each other. And the other aspect that I was going to ask, and actually Councillor Walsh asked the same question, was the rollout of the LED light, and I was glad to hear that that is still on the run. And I was looking at the whole aspect. Is there any lights out in North Sligo? Because I kind of hear Sligo town being mentioned here, and I kind of went down to North Sligo on a few occasions, and there is 1 or 2 of them out down there in the past. I don't know if you got them fixed.
There were lights out. There were lights out at Clifney.
Sorry, 1 second, Councillor Casserly, yep.
Yeah, no, there were lights out in Clifney Village, and in fairness to Electric Skyline, they came back and they repaired all but 1, and I'm hoping that that 1 has been repaired. And again, I suppose the lighting at Mullaghmore that's been in the village, and that has been raised on a few occasions, and Mr. Kilfeather is aware of that as well, that there's a need for more public lighting in the village. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Sorry, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Turn off your mic, Councillor Taylor.
Been bored here, I listen to all this stuff.
No, just to say here, just to support the motion, and to say as well, you know, that Councillor O'Grady probably has said there already that, you know, Electric Skyline normally when contacted are extremely efficient and quick to come out and repair, but in the last number of months, I would have found that, you know, you have to report it 2 or 3 times, and there's difficulty with lights and Gerching as well in Monastrell. They're still not done. But anyway, look, maybe it's the present time we're living in.
Thank you, Councillor. Everything else okay, Councillor Quinn and Councillor Bay?
We can't see you now. Hang on, there's something wrong.
Motion number 31, Councillor Bray and Councillor Boyle.
Despite the heroic efforts of overworked and underpaid frontline workers, the COVID pandemic has exposed the poor state of health services north and south of the border. The most recent surge in cases, with hospitals again under enormous strain, is a reflection of the devastating consequences of years of cuts and underfunding of the health services on both sides of the border. The absence of an integrated cross-border public health strategy on COVID-19 reflects poorly on the government and the Stormont executive, and has undoubtedly contributed to the significant outbreaks of the virus across the entire border region. In this context, the case for an all-Ireland National Health Service has never been stronger. For too many years, the public sector has been undermined and criticised by those who sought to profit at the expense of ordinary people. Over the years, we were encouraged to believe that the private sector was best, was most reliable, most efficient and most effective. However, the pandemic has exposed the myth of the supremacy of the private sector and the market in meeting our needs. Today, a growing number of people are beginning to understand the need for real social change. They recognise that concepts and ideas which seemed impossible a few years ago, such as a single-tier all-Ireland health system, now make perfect sense. Since my first days in politics, Cathaoirleach, I have always advocated for a universal public health system that provides care for all at the point of delivery on the basis of need and not on the basis of how much money they had. For too long, the health system that has existed in this country has failed to deliver. It's failed because it is grossly unfair and inequitable two-tier health system. Ability to pay has been the key determining factor in access to care, both in terms of timely access and, in many cases, quality of care. Month after month, we witnessed public waiting lists continue to rise, while at the same time we witnessed the growth of private medicine and medical corporations and the tendering out of health services, enriching private interest at the expense of the public good. More and more people, despite the costs, felt compelled to buy private health insurance because they had great fear of being left on long waiting lists. However, when the pandemic hit us last March, the then Minister for Health, Simon Harris, said, and I quote, "We must, of course, have equality of treatment. Patients with this virus will be treated for free and they'll be treated as part of a single national hospital service. For the duration of the crisis, the state will take control of all private hospital facilities and manage all of the resources for the common benefit of all our people. There can be no room for public versus private when it comes to the pandemic," the Minister said. And the significance of the Minister's statement cannot be overstated, because it then became clear that if healthcare can be provided for free and accessed according to medical need for COVID-19, then why not in every other circumstances? Why should the ability to pay or take out insurance for health services dictate outcomes for cancer patients or for those suffering on waiting lists for hip replacements and other procedures? Chair, as COVID-19 has revealed, the public good is not compatible with private corporate profit and greed. We now need a fully integrated all-Ireland public health strategy and a universal single-tier service where patients will be treated on the basis of health need rather than on ability to pay. I formally move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbon. Councillor Boyle, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. This campaign has been set up in May 2020 and has received their support from other councils and from over 100 trade unionists, academics, community activists, healthcare workers. As our communities have struggled to cope with the threat of the disease, job losses, isolation and lockdown, the response from our local authority and our community sector has been a tremendous lifeline. Certainly the residents of our city have shown incredible resilience in these times of great uncertainty and upheaval. However, there are things can be absolutely certain about others. The pandemic has stripped away the covers from our health service and revealed the consequences of decades of under-resourcing and outsourcing, north and south. Our frontline health workers are disorientated and exhausted, our people frustrated, distressed and sick. Ireland in 2021 has one of the lowest levels of hospital beds at 3/4 of the EU average, and even worse, the levels of ICU beds at half the EU average. The recent government deal with private hospitals is inadequate both for the scale of COVID crisis and for the exponential number of patients waiting for urgent non-COVID treatments, and certainly reveals the need for urgent expansion of public provision by way of nationalising of private hospitals. Poor coordination north and south has worsened the pandemic on our island. A shining example of what is possible came in December when ambulance crews from the south worked with their northern counterparts to provide support for patients as health services in the north were overwhelmed. The result of decades of under resources and poor north and south coordination is that a small island compares poorly with similar countries like Denmark and New Zealand. With high infection rate and death rates, we can be certain that we cannot go back to broken health services of pre-COVID-19. The disease does not recognise borders. An all-Ireland National Health Service is not just necessary now, but increasingly urgent. We can also be certain with a change of heart and a change of policy, this situation can be turned around in months and years rather than decades, but we must start urgently. This motion to show the support campaign for the All-Ireland National Health Service is not just necessary now, increasingly, but an urgent necessity, and an urgent call must go from our council today to our political and health sectors, leaders, north and south. The time to act is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilroy.
Yeah, look, I'd support the motion and welcome that it should be done on an All Ireland. But I'd just like to bring to members' attention. I was on a trip back from Brussels, and Damien McCallion, a Sligo man, was sitting beside me in the plane, and he had been part of setting up the programmes that were working between North and South, and that he got them to that post-Brexit, that up until I think it was 2025, a deal had been done, and that was in 2019. That was a full year before any of the other Brexit things. So I'd like to commend him especially and his team for working on that, and to congratulate him. I believe he's become the national lead now on the vaccine rollout, on the management of the vaccine rollout. So it's great to have a Sligo man at the helm of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion, Councillor Healy supports the motion. Motion agreed. Motion number 32, Councillor.
Second that. Look, I wish to defer number 32. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bree. Councillor Queenan. Number 33.
I thank Ms. Cannon for our report, and it's imperative that we have public toilets in Enniscrone for this summer season. The Portaloo was a stopgap last year, and I think for the blue flag purposes and for our tourists, we need good toilets, and I thank the council who have allocated funding to upgrade the toilets in this one. So I'm happy with that report. Right.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. That's grand. Next again, Councillor Queenan. Councillor Clark, second.
Yeah, again, I thank Mr. Cannon for the report. We're looking forward to see a number of projects in West Sligo on the list when they go to the OPW in spring.
Thank you.
Okay, there was two motions done in 30 seconds. Some councillors spent 20 minutes doing two motions. I think we all have to work together because there's a lot of motions here, and we only have an hour 55. I think we have to focus on this in the next couple of meetings if we're going to get.
Thank you, Councillor. Motion number 35, Councillor Maguire.
I do have a couple of minutes to speak on this, but my other motions will be short. I've received a report from Pete Murtha, and I have to say I was disappointed by the report. My request is that we set up a water safety forum for County Sligo, and that we invite all stakeholders to review what our current offering is and to see how it can be bolstered and improved, because our current measures are falling short, and specific and realistic mitigation measures have been suggested in the past. Obviously, in Strandhill, this is a particularly complex issue in a small village at a stressful time. However, the recent events have shown that there is greater need now more than ever for us to improve the current beach safety model being used in Strandhill. There have been numerous near misses. In fact, one surf school alone, that's one of 5 working out of Strandhill, have recorded 12 tragedies that were averted by their instructors who saved people from potentially drowning in Strandhill. That was last season. There have been multiple rescues, and with more and more visitors than ever coming to Strandhill, and the Strandhill rescue, surf rescue being inactive unfortunately last year, there is a gap that local surf instructors and surfers cannot and should not be asked to fill. The gap is the ability to prevent incidents from occurring and the ability to respond appropriately when they do. The scenes, unfortunately, were repeated again and again last summer, and while there were measures in place warning of the dangers and that the beach is not suitable for swimming, more can and should be done, I believe. The beach wardens do a great job. They warn people of the dangers and actively trying to get swimmers out of the water. But they have limited days and hours of operation, and as a resource, it's unreasonable and unrealistic to expect that 2 people can ensure that nobody swims in Strandhill. It's an unfortunate byproduct that this also pushes swimmers even further to the edges of the beach and makes it less likely that they can be rescued if they get into difficulty. The Strand Hill Surf Rescue Group was created to rescue surfers and bodyboarders who got into trouble. The formation of this volunteer group highlights the acknowledgement that these groups of people are getting into trouble and that they often need rescuing. As the Surf Rescue Group was not active in 2020, there is another gap in the safety net to prevent possible drownings. The beach signage and the public rescue equipment is there, but the last thing on anyone's mind as they try to follow arrows, keep social distance on the busy beachfront, is to read signs. And it's common knowledge that many visitors to Strand Hill do not know that it is a no swimming beach. I note in Mr. Murtagh's report that the suggestion that has been made in relation to electronic signage at the entrance to the village has been taken up, and I welcome that. But the above points that the evidence is that the current beach safety model has some impact, but from my point of view it shows that a whole lot more can and should be done. Hence my request for a forum. I think it is a reasonable request. I know that we were hampered due to COVID, but we're having a meeting virtually. So many meetings happen virtually. There's no reason why we couldn't establish a forum which could meet virtually even now during the restrictions. The other suggestion to improve beach safety is to maintain all of the beach bylaws. No swimming, no surfboard, rental, beach wardens attending, but to reintroduce beach lifeguards. I think this is vital. I'm aware that it is potentially divisive, and so I'll explain where I'm coming from. 95% of a beach lifeguard's work is preventative. They talk to the public, they educate them of the dangers, and in Strand Hill's case, it would be flying a red flag every day and advising the public that it is a no swimming beach. There would be no flagged swim zone and lifeguards there as an additional layer to ensure that no one swims in the water. If and when someone got into trouble, there as trained professionals on scene to do a rescue if required, and that's only usually 5% of their time. This beach life savings model main criticism is that having beach lifeguards on a beach promotes it as a safe place to swim. I argue the opposite is true. Having a professional team of beach lifeguards working daily alongside the beach wardens to interact with the public, supported with clear signage for every visitor on arrival to the village, and actively spreading the message that it's a no swimming beach will only make Strand Hill a safer place for all. It is unimaginable to think of the effect of another drowning would have on our community, and that is why I'm making this motion so strongly and ask the council to reconsider the response that I've received and to look at establishing a forum where all stakeholders will be invited to participate and give their opinions, and so that we can improve the offering that we are currently giving in Strand Hill, because it would be unconscionable if we allowed another tragedy to occur on this beach. That's my motion, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Councillor Gibbons.
I'd actually have to support the motion. I see it myself out there. I see with the surf school going on out there, and I even notice with the signage that's out there, I think it's in Polish and in English, and because of the population that we have in Sligo, of course, and you still get people risking life and limb going out into it. And I really feel myself, because it is one of the most how it's sought after surf beaches, I suppose, in the country and probably in Europe. It attracts a lot of surfers from all over the world, which brings tourism, it brings money to the area, whatever. And I cannot see why we cannot have the resources there, the safety measures put in place, qualified people with a good knowledge of the area to man the safety of the beach. Now, as somebody itself who we lost a very close family friend a number of years ago. She was only 22 years of age when she drowned in Strand Hill, and she would have been my wife's best friend. And I know the tragedy and the devastation that brought to that family and thing. And it was only for the local family, or the local family that was in that area. And they advised people that day, and that was the Byrne family. They have a great knowledge, Jonathan Byrne and a couple of his brothers there that have a few businesses going there. But they used to volunteer their time on that beach, and their knowledge of that beach was second to none. And they advised the public that day not to go into the water. 15 people got into trouble. She was the first taken out of the water, and she was 22 years of age. She was the one that lost her life. She had 2 little infants by her hand, belongs to a friend of hers, and the kids survived, but she didn't. And it always stuck with me, and I always paid close attention to what was happening at Strandhill. And I even seen it on another occasion where canoeists got into trouble in Strandhill and had to be rescued. They couldn't make their way in towards the shore with the currents and everything else. But I would have to support the motion, and I really feel myself that the money, the resources needs to be put into it, because do remember, it's not a swimming beach, but we are trying to promote it as a surfing beach, and that is the one thing, and we do need the safety resources in place, and it helps tourism, it helps the area, and it keeps Strandhill on the map.
Thank you, Mr. Kilfeather.
I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed by Councillor Maguire's take on the report. I felt reading it myself, it was showing certainly a willingness in terms of the actions that were proposed for the year, and also in terms of awaiting the outcome of the risk assessment. And look, there are strong views, and Strandhill is a difficult. There's no magic bullet to solve the issue in Strandhill. But I would put it on the record here, my opinion, Councillor Maguire, is I cannot see a situation where Sligo County Council will employ beach lifeguards in Strandhill to go into water that is dangerous for swimming. That would be my view on it, in terms of some of the issues that you've suggested. I cannot see where we would tell a beach lifeguard, look, it's okay for you to go into the water there, it's dangerous for everyone else, but you go in if there's someone in difficulty. And that's the problem. People are going to go into the water, no matter how much signage there is, no matter how many beach wardens there are. And it's just, there's no simple solution. We're very happy to take on board any suggestions that anyone has in relation to how we can do it better in Strandhill. But I'm just saying, I'm putting on the record that I don't think beach lifeguards is where we want to go. Thank you, Cahill.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle.
No, thank you, Chair. It was just to support Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Councillor Casterly.
Just to support Councillor Maguire as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Sinead, do you want to come in again, Councillor Maguire? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. If I could just respond. This is highly emotive, obviously, and I know it's much closer to the heart of some people at this meeting than perhaps directly to me. But I do feel really strongly on it. I qualified as a lifeguard many moons ago. I live in Strandhill. I see it on a daily basis. I hear it from people constantly. The ask, Mr. Kilfeather, was very small, I think. It was for a forum. And it was a forum to engage all stakeholders, but people who have much greater expertise, who do have the knowledge, who do have the expertise, who know what the resources are, who know what the possibilities are in relation to the provision of a comprehensive service at Strandhill. I completely take on board your point in relation to lifeguards. And as I said from the outset, I knew it would be divisive, but a wee bit like the border poll, I suppose we're discussing it, and that's what the forum I suggest would do. It would be a discussion for us to get people who have greater knowledge and to talk about what are the possibilities. There's Irish Water Safety, there's the RNLI, there's Coast Guard, there's Swim Ireland. There are numerous groups who do this work on a daily basis, and I think if we gathered those together, we could come up with a better offering for Strandhill, and I think there's an onus on us. Just in relation to lifeguards getting into the water, it happens around the world. That's unfortunately what lifeguards do. They are employed to go into water to try and rescue people. Now they can do that in a number of ways. You can go out on a paddleboard, you could go out on a motorised boat. They don't necessarily have to be swimming. So those are ways which the council could, I suppose, from a legal or ethical perspective, allow somebody in their employ to put themselves in that position in order to try and save somebody else's life. So I am, I suppose, slightly vexed on this because it's a full year that I've been asking for this, meeting with people, discussing with the people in Strandhill, various stakeholders, and going back to the council. I understand COVID has happened and that has created delays, but we could have a forum virtually, and I think it would be worthwhile, and I think it would improve the offering, and I think that's the onus that's on us as a council.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Caherla. Just look, I suppose I'm not going to be quiet on this. It's a difficult motion, you know, and I know Councillor Maguire has I suppose been flying the flag for this in Strandhill for quite a while now, and you know I hear CEO's views as well, and Tom, I understand where you're coming from too, and a lot of Sinead's motion I would agree with too, but you know what we're doing at the moment isn't working because there are still an awful lot of people swimming in the beach in Strandhill. Signage, whereas it should work, it doesn't work. Unfortunately, when the weather is hot and the water is there, young people and people of all ages will enter the water because they have no fear. And you know, I think we've all been in that position at some stage in our life. I understand the views of everybody. I understand the views of the council as well. But you know, I do believe that what we're doing at the moment isn't enough and isn't working. And I would have to support the view that we need to do more. And whether that's through major consultation or that there's a group set up to help with this, you know, I think the time will come, and I hope it doesn't, but I think it will, that there will be more tragedy out there, and I wouldn't like to see that coming to any door again in the future.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll give the final word on this to Mr. Kilfeather.
Okay, here, look, again, just reference back to the report, there's a number of actions that we're committed to taking. Councillor Maguire has followed up with that. Well, she said what she's asked for in the report. We will arrange for a convening of a meeting or a forum or get that started, Councillor Maguire, as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Now, unfortunately, time has come against us. We've had to stop at motion number 36. With your agreement, I might just take the votes of sympathy and the votes of congratulations, if that's okay. Is that proposed and agreed? And just on the votes of congratulations, I have one here myself, and I know it was seconded by Councillor Casserly, was a vote of congratulations to Tommy Gorman. Tommy Gorman is to be congratulated for a long and distinguished career as one of Ireland's best known and respected journalists. He wears his unabashed love and respect for his home proudly on his sleeve wherever his travel takes him. One cannot work for 40 plus years in journalism at the highest level as Tommy Gorman did unless you are respected and trusted by all this on this island. The respect in nature stems from his combination of integrity and hard work, character and unwavering commitment to delivering the news fairly and objectively. For many years, he has brought the news of some of the most important and consequential developments, good and bad news, on our radio and TV late at night and early in the morning, and his voice immediately was one which we paid attention to as we awaited a fair assessment of the day's events. As many throughout the forthcoming weeks, it's only fitting that we as members of Sligo County Council join in the chorus and express our pride in Tommy and wish him a long and healthy retirement for himself and his family. So just if that's agreed.
Caherla, can I associate myself with those remarks, Caherla? Tommy has certainly travelled a long way in every sense of the word since his early days working with the Sligo Journal. Back then, as he commenced his career in journalism, covering meetings of Sligo Corporation and this county council, I think all of us in local politics, irrespective of our views or ideology, were confident that Tommy Gorman's coverage of our meetings and of political events would be balanced, impartial and accurate. As with all his work over the decades, he was objective and fair and treated everyone with respect. And these traits remained with him through his entire career with RTE and have won him plaudits and respect from people across the political spectrum in Ireland and Britain and the European Union. And of course, over the years, he has always been passionate about his hometown, and he never missed an opportunity to promote Sligo. And it has to be said that the people of Sligo in return have always been proud of one of their own, Tommy Gorman. Paying tribute at the weekend, Colm Eastwood said that Tommy can enjoy swapping cold, wet nights outside Stormont for the showgrounds, chasing more lost causes with his beloved Sligo Rovers. Colm was correct in one aspect, Cathaoirleach, for Tommy must be one of Sligo Rovers' most devoted fans, and I've no doubt but that in his retirement he'll look forward to spending more times at the showgrounds. But Tommy will not be there to chase any lost cause. He'll be there with all the other fans supporting a Rovers team, which we can all be proud of. And I wish Tommy and his wife, Ciara, and his family a long, happy and healthy retirement.
Thank you. Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, just a seconder of the motion there, and just to say a couple of words again, I'll be very brief. He grew up on Cairns Road, and for 41 years from Brussels to Belfast via Sligo and Saipan, Tommy Gorman has been the beating heart of RTE News. He's not only a reporter of news, but passionately committed to the island of Ireland and its people. While training at the School of Journalism Rathmines, he got his first byline stories in the local Sligo Champion in the form of match reports of Sligo Rovers games. In fact, it has often been said that Tommy was delighted to use every opportunity to talk about his hometown. This was evident in one of the most memorable scenes during the documentary Europe, Cancer and Me, as Tommy emerges from an operation and gets good news from his surgery. The way he expressed his relief is with a simple sentence with a special significance for Sligo people. He says, "Up the Rovers." On Friday night's Late, Tommy again called Sligo his hometown. He also talked about his thoughts on a border poll, and his reply was, "I think this country, north and south, is at its best when it is tolerant." Tommy's thoughts and expertise is something we should keep to the fore of our minds when discussing building better relations with Northern Ireland.
Thank you, members. Sorry, we're nearly down to a quorum here. I'm going to have to finish the meeting. Can I? Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I would say about Tommy Gorman,
Yeah.
Tommy was always a Sligo household name, and the people of Sligo supported Tommy a number of years ago when he got the most prestigious honour within Sligo, in Sligo town, which was the freedom of the borough. And that is something that should not be forgot, because it's not everybody got that. It was people with outstanding achievements that got that, and Tommy, as being a native of Sligo and promote Sligo the way that he did, that's exactly what his achievement was, and the people of Sligo is very proud of Tommy and very proud of his achievements.
Councillor McSharry, I'll just last word to you.
Just very briefly, Cathaoirleach, thanks for letting me in, but I suppose I'm speaking really on behalf of my uncle Ray McSharry, who would have soldiered along with Tommy Gorman both here and in Europe, and he has often said that of all the journalists he's ever met, that Tommy Gorman, he tops them all. He's intelligent, articulate, compassionate, but most importantly, Tommy was always very popular with everybody, and he has left behind a sterling career, and we all wish him the very, very best of luck in his retirement. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you. Members, are we agreed to reconvene next Monday at the same time? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Members, thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you meeting next week. Yeah, sorry.
Can we go later in the afternoon? Can we go in the afternoon?
Well, this is something we're going to have to put out, maybe send out a thing to the members. Right. I'm okay. I'm okay. If there's general agreement, what do we say, 2 o'clock?
What are you proposing?
Propose a time? Martin or Paul?
I suppose 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock next Monday, is that okay? Yeah. So we'll go with 2 o'clock and we'll put that out to the rest of the people. Is that okay? Thanks. Thanks everybody, and safe home. Oh yeah, we'll still have the 2 hours, and hopefully we'll get through them all. We're halfway there, so with your cooperation. Thank you.